Today we're going to work on Lesson 8, which is solving multi-step equations with rational numbers, meaning we're going to be working with fractions or decimals. So our goal is I can solve an equation with fraction or decimal constants and coefficients that require multiple simplifying and solving steps on both sides of the equal sign. So we completed a lesson, our last lesson, which just entailed whole numbers and integers, and so we're going to use these same solving steps. The first step, the first two steps are simplifying steps, which means we're going to simplify each side of the equation before we start the solving process. We're going to use the distributive property to release the parentheses on both sides of the equation if necessary. Sometimes it's not necessary on both sides, or either side. Then we go to combining all like terms before starting to solve, and once again, if that's necessary. Then we're to our solving steps. Step 3, if our variables on both sides of the equation, we zero out or eliminate one of the terms. We usually try to eliminate the weaker or least term so that we can avoid negatives. Fourth, we zero out or eliminate the constant by either adding or subtracting. And finally, we divide or multiply by the coefficient of the variable, which also eliminates the coefficient. So let's get started. You'll want your calculator with you, and preferably a calculator that you're able to enter fractions in. So you can see our first example involves fractions. And as I look, I don't see a pair of parentheses. So that means I am not going to need the first step, which means to release a parentheses because there aren't any parentheses. Next, the second step is to combine like terms. And at this point, I usually build the wall, but I am not solving until both sides are as reduced as possible. So let's look at this first side. I see a variable and I see a number. So I have a variable with a coefficient of 1 and a constant. So this is as simplified as this side is going to get. So I'm now going to go on to the next side. I see a number. I see a term that has a variable and a number, so the 3 is a coefficient. And I see a number. It happens to be a mixed number, but there's no variable attached. So I have a constant here and a constant here. I'm going to put those two constants together. I'm going to add negative 1/4 and negative 2 3/4. So at this point, would you please pause and use your calculator? Just to recall how you would enter a fraction in your TI-30X calculator, you would always make sure that you clear the calculator. You're going to enter the negative sign, which is the little key at the bottom, not the minus sign. Then you're going to place the 1, the numerator, and then we need the ABC key, and we need the 4. That is the way the calculator will enter negative 1/4. Then we're going to add, or you could put minus, either minus 2 3/4 or adding a negative 2 3/4. So I'm going to choose minus, and for 2 3/4 I have to enter 2, ABC, and then 3, ABC, 4. So when we put those two together, we get negative 3. And if you look at this, it makes sense. I have a negative 1/4, and I'm adding another negative number to it. So we're going to put them together, combine them. And since this is 3/4 and I add another 1/4, it makes sense I make a whole number. So this side would be negative 3 plus this 3y, this term that's been kind of hanging out waiting. And on the other side, I have 1y, and I'm going to go ahead and place the coefficient of 1 in front of it, plus 3 halves. So now we're ready for our solving step because we have a term with a variable and a constant, and we have a term with a variable and a constant. We've simplified these two sides as much as possible. So we're now going to go on to the solving step. I do see variables on both sides. I see a 1y and I see a 3y. So I'm going to consider the 1y the weakest of those two. So I'm going to take one y away on both sides of the equation. And I have positive or plus 3/2, so I'm going to drop that down as positive 3/2. I still have minus 3 on this side, and now I'm taking away one of the y's, so I have two y's left. So that was our third step, but our first solving step. Now I'm going to go on to our second solving step, but the fourth step, it's also the fourth step overall listed up above. Now I'm going to remove or eliminate the constant on this side, the side with the variable. And I see negative 3, so the opposite of negative 3 would be positive 3. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So once again, now I'm going to ask you to pause and use your calculator to take 3/2 plus 3. Again, you're going to enter that as 3 ABC2 plus 3. And that answer is 4 1/2. And then this eliminates, leaving positive 2y. So now to enter our final step, I'm going to move this up here so we have a little bit more room without going into that next problem. So now step 5, our final step, is to look at the side that has the variable, and I see a coefficient of 2. There's side by side, which means multiply. So the solving step would be to do the opposite. We're going to divide by 2 on both sides. Again, you would enter this in your calculator as 4 ABC1, ABC2, and then this is a division sign, so divide by 2. The answer would be 2 1/4 equals y. So that's our solution. Now, working with fractions, even with the calculators, can sometimes be cumbersome. There's a lot of steps. And so we just have to be very diligent when we write this down. Let's go on to example number 2. So step 1 above says that we should release the parentheses by using the distributive property. And so this first side, we see this. We're going to take 3 times m, which is 3m. And then 3 times, here's where we need to be careful, the signs, negative 2/3. So pause and use your calculator and take 3 times negative 2 ABC 3. And the answer should be negative 2. So now on the other side, you notice there's not any parentheses. So we're just going to drop down what we see, 3/4 m plus 2 1/4. So now we're on to step 2. And step 2 says to combine any like terms. So let's investigate. I have a group with a variable, a term with a variable, and I have a term that's just a constant. Here I have a term with a variable, and then I have just a constant. So we don't have to use the second step. This is as simplified, both sides are as simplified as we can get. So now we're ready for our solving step. We're going to build our wall, and then we're going to look and see if we have variables on both sides, which we do. And so this would be considered the least or the weakest of the variables. So we're going to eliminate it by subtracting 3/4 m on both sides. So I'm going to take away 3/4 m, and then I'm going to take away 3/4 m. So it eliminates over here, but if you'd use your calculator or your logic and take 3m minus 3/4. So we should have 2 1/4 m, and then we drop down minus 2 on this side. This is eliminated, and on the other side we have 2 1/4. So now we're to our fourth step, which is to eliminate the constant on the side with the variable. So this side has the variable, and I want this minus 2 to be eliminated. So we are going to add 2 to both sides. Again, you can pause and use your calculator, or you could choose to use your logic. So we eliminate this, and we have 2 and 1/4 m, and on this side we have 4 and 1/4. So we have one final step. We want m by itself, and there's the number coefficient with it. Side by side means multiply, so we're going to do the opposite to solve this. We're going to divide by 2 and 1/4, and we're going to divide by 2 and 1/4. So once again, you can pause and use your calculator. Once again, just to be clear, you'd enter 4 ABC1 ABC4 divided by 2 ABC1 ABC4. And the answer is 1 and 8/9. So m equals 1 and 8/9. So now let's go on to our last example problem. And I should correctly call these equations, not problems. So when we look at this, we notice that we don't have fractions, but we do have decimals. And decimals and fractions are often referred to as rational numbers. If we go back to our steps up above, we want to use a distributive property first if we see parentheses. And sure enough, we do see parentheses. So we're going to start this by taking 3 times 4p, which would be 12p. Then 3 times, look what's in front of the 5 and 0.5. It's a negative sign. So we're going to enter in our calculator 3 times negative 5 and 5/10. And that is a negative 16 and 5/10. Now this term here, plus 11 and 1/10, is not within the parentheses, so we just drop it down as is. And on the other side, we just drop that down. We drop every term down as is. So now we're at step 2. We want to look and see if we have any terms to combine on each side of the equation. We can't cross over this equal sign. There's no crossing over this until we're using a solving step. Right now we're simplifying. So I see that on this side, this is the only term that has a variable, the variable p. So we're going to drop that down, and then we're going to gather up our constants. I see a negative 16 and 5/10 and a positive 11 and 1/10. So please use your calculator and add those together. So I really want to emphasize that we're going to enter this minus 16.5 as a negative, and then we're going to add 11.1, and the answer should be a negative 5 and 4/10. So now we have a term with a variable and we have a constant. That's as simplified as this side can get. And on the other side, I have a constant and a term with a variable. This side is already as simplified as it can get. So now we're on to our solving step. This is step number 3. I'm going to look and see if I have a term with a variable on both sides. Well, I do. I have 12p and 3p. 3p would be considered the weakest of those two terms, so we're going to eliminate it by subtracting 3p on both sides. On this side, I have 9p left over, and then minus 5 and 4/10 just drops down. This is eliminated here, and what's on this side is 8 and 1/10. So we're done with that. Would be step number 3. Now we're into step number 4, which asks us to eliminate the constant that's on the side with the variable. So this side has the variable. This is the constant with the variable. I see minus 5 and 4/10, so we're going to add 5 and 4/10 on both sides. This is eliminated, and I have 9p, and you can use your calculator to find, or do it if without it, 13 and 5/10. So that was step number 4. We're to our final solving step. And the last solving step says to eliminate the coefficient, which is the number that works with the variable. So 9p means 9 times p. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we're going to divide by 9 on both sides. So please use your calculator to take 13 and 5/10 divided by 9. And that answer is 1 and 5/10. So now I'd like you to turn to the next page, and I'd like you to try the 4 practice problems on page 16. The first 2 involve fractions. The second 2 involve decimals. Thanks so much for listening, and I appreciate your attention. Have a good day.